Okay, let's start tonight's program. Welcome to tonight's program, AV, AR and VR, Immersive Yourself in a New Reality. I'm director of Academy 2, which is a two-campus effort between Irvine and San Diego. And our institute focuses on research and development of information and communication technology, but also to explore their use for transforming health, environments, energy, and cultures. So in tonight's event is about how we use the technology to transform the cultures in entertainment, education, and so on, using AR and VR. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you all. I know this is family time, and you are really spending your precious family time at the evening with us, allowing us to exchange the idea with you. And I also like to take this opportunity to thank our distinguished speaker for tonight for their contribution for a successful event. And also, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors, Kenobi, Martin, Olsen, and Bear for their continuing support of this igniting technology. Without their strong support, we won't be here to really celebrate this new idea and this new emerging, and it's going to be the key thing in the next, I don't know how many years. And another thing I'd like to remind you is after today's presentation, we do have the reception and network session, as well as we have one lab to do the demo on the second floor. We invite you to visit the lab and see what is happening at the UCI technology development as well. So now I will turn the podium to tonight's moderator. Our moderator is Ron Schoenbaum, who is currently a partner with Kenobi, Martin, Olsen, and Bear. Let's invite Ron here.
Thank you. Kenobi Martins is very proud to be a sponsor of this event. I'm just going to say a few words about our firm and then turn it over to our first speaker. We're a firm of over 300 attorneys. We just do intellectual property law. Almost all of us have science and engineering backgrounds. We're based here in Irvine, but have offices throughout the West Coast and one in DC as well. I'm the head of our firm's software and IT group, which is a group that focuses on patent protection for software innovations. So tonight's topic is one that's of great interest to me. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Walt.
All right. So we just got a few more people sneaking in the back. So I'm Walt Skokie. I'm the research director at the UCI Institute for Virtual Environments and Computer Games. And I also have friends at Cal IT and the Dahlgren School of Information and Computer Sciences. And what I want to talk about tonight is just give you a brief introduction to some of the projects that we've been involved in looking at how computer games and virtual worlds can kind of relate to things in virtual reality and more. So to just sort of start things off, virtual reality, augmented reality, these are sort of powerful terms that we see bantered about in popular media. But it turns out, of course, this is not something that just came around the last few years or decade or so. And these terms of virtual reality and augmented reality actually, in some cases, have a history going back 50, 60, 80 years or more. And some of the areas that you see listed here, I won't go through them. You can just kind of are examples of different things that people have at one point or the other referred to or labeled as virtual reality or augmented reality. So you see things from like dreams, hallucinations, cycloramas, circle vision. Some of you may remember Disneyland used to have Circle Vision 360 in the 1960s, a big large room where they did this little fancy trick of making everyone fall over at the same time, because you can kind of do that with circular or now 300 video, VR video kind of a thing, or video 360. Head-mounted displays, and of course these actual physical fantasy worlds like Disneyland and Burning Man are a different kind of reality that are, if you will, those are by far the most immersive because you are really there, you are really doing it, but it's not the ordinary everyday world as we're used to thinking about it. So just sort of maybe narrow it down a bit to say, well, what do we want to kind of focus on today is this thing of, so we're really looking at just computer-mediated immersive presentations that typically encapsulate one or more of the senses, that render in the case of virtual, or overlay in the case of augmented, what you see, what you can play with, what you can work with, and the like. So in shorthand, we'd like to think about virtual reality or augmented reality as being things that have at least the following three characteristics. They have an embodiment as technology, that they can be engaged and rendered as a form of content, and that they can be recognized potentially as immersive and present as a kind of experience. So VR, AR, technology, content, experience. And given that kind of a framing, it means that VR is not one specific technology or content or experience. It's many things. So don't think of your favorite vendor or the like and say, oh, they're doing VR and nobody else is, or it's like, again, it's a wide open area in many ways. So I want to talk about three kinds of things that we've been doing in sort of looking at kind of how computer games and virtual worlds cross over into virtual reality and augmented reality, because certainly from a technology standpoint, the technology of modern computer games, especially network multiplayer games, and virtual reality from a software standpoint are quite similar, maybe even the same thing. So we want to take a look at that in terms of both some things we've already done and some things we're looking at going forward. Okay, so a little bit of history. So one of the first mixed reality environments that we were involved in developing is deployed up in Santa Ana over at the, for those of you who remember driving up the 5 freeway in Santa Ana, you've seen the Discovery Science Center, now rebranded as the Discovery Cube. And you've seen, if you've gone there with family or friends, this immersive 40,000 square foot environment, which is actually built as an embedded sensor network, which is a physically embodied game where players work with effectors, in this case an infrared wand, and there are embedded sensors in the environment, and you're given tasks to perform or problems to solve that you pick up at workstations that are surrounded there. And as you see, there's, there's a focus on family-oriented experience. Okay, so learning about science as a family kind of a thing, especially children and parents or children and grandparents and the like. So this experience is still up and running. It's now in its 8th year, a little long in the tooth, but you know, there's about a few thousand people a week that go through this, so it's certainly been something that's been interesting to do. Complementing this was a effort that we did here at UCI, which was a online counterpart, which is called DinoQuest Online, which has since been retired. But you see here, we could recreate a set of experiences, again, targeting young students, where part of what we could do is try to give them the experience of working in a modern research laboratory. So think about kids 6, 7, 8 years old having a research lab. Well, it's expensive to give them a real lab, but if it's something that they can have on a computer or a tablet or a phone now, and you see these ideas that we picked up from Cal IT once upon a time, for those of you who remember things like hyperwalls and collaboratories, and we just made those things that kids could just have on their own. So how can we take state-of-the-art scientific research and make it available to the young students? Why? Because they're the coming generation. They're the people who are going to want to see and do and live these things. So and there are papers on all of these things somewhere along the way. Another project we did in this case for Intel. So the computers that we have up here, which have Intel-based microprocessors, are more likely than not fabricated in this facility outside of Chandler, Arizona, which, as you see, is a 5-story tall, 1 football field long and 5 football fields wide, modern semiconductor fabrication facility. That's an $8 billion to build facility. It was at the time the world's most expensive factory. They run 24/7, 365. They have a run rate of about 1.2 million per hour in terms of the value of the retail product that they're producing, and they run round the clock. And they're filled with these machines like scanning microscopes and ovens and different technologies. And one of the problems, of course, that they have is training adult technicians to service and to diagnose these machines. So these are not the people who design the circuitry. These are the people who actually get the chips made. So they tend to be adult blue-collar workers. And we had some of these machines here at UCI in the Integrated Nanosystems Research Facility. So we took the opportunity to go over and build models of these things, and then we acquired on eBay a $9 computer game at the time called Unreal Tournament 2007, which we were able to create a mod for. So we took this game where you're sort of running around with monsters and an underground lair, and we modified it so it became something that emulated the look and feel of a modern semiconductor fabrication facility, where then all of the capabilities that the game had, the multi-user support, the networking, the graphics, were all just available at that $9 price point. And then for those of you who've all played Unreal Tournament 2K7, where you see things like the bio rifle down here. Anybody recognize the bio rifle? Okay. We've repurposed the weapons to now be sensors. So when you put the reticule, the target, on a material spill, it gives you a diagnostic reading. Because, of course, the physics of the game doesn't care whether you're shooting or whether you're bouncing off a signal. And so, of course, what was key about this is the idea that it was a radical rethinking of how to train adult technicians in a high complex, high value factory of the present or of the future. Another project we did in the looking at planetary science and climate data. So this is a project done at the Discovery Science Center with the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration technology that they call Science on a Sphere. So again, this is an exhibit you can go up and see. That's a 6-foot spherical globe or ball that 4 projectors are projecting content on. So think of it as a dynamic globe, except you can have different scientific data sets that you can poof up on it. And it's a very high wow factor thing for kids who see it for the first time. It's very dramatic. But the problem is that they get like a 10-minute experience and then they're shuttled off into the next learning experience. And so we wanted something that people could, teachers could bring into the classroom. to interact with that. So we basically built in the OpenSim virtual world environment a capability to interact with all of the NOAA data sets that come from NASA and the like. And so we can, it turns out we can not only view their data, but we can interoperate with their system and do things like create space debris fields, which turned out to got us some interest from some friends in the Air Force and the Department of Defense that said, hey, you know, if you can turn games into things that look very different and you can interact with these kind of scientific data sets, and you can do space debris fields, which are kind of interesting now to people who want to keep satellites free of space debris. I said, well, how about these command and control systems that we have? Because the Department of Defense currently has about 1,200 such systems. This is what's called a theater level system. This is about a $30 million setup, and as you see, you have about 30 people who sit in front of personal displays and sensors, and then you have these room size or wall size projections. So you have private information as well as shared information. And of course, creating a mirror world of that seemed to be pretty straightforward, and making avatars of people were, again, pretty straightforward. But what was surprising was that we could do this all with just a couple of undergraduate students, and then make these systems available for distribution on thumb drives, okay, which when we presented that in Washington at the Institute for Defense Analysis, people took some attention to, wait, you can build command and control systems that are out of open source and you can put them on thumb drives and give them away? We said, yeah, we can. And they said, wait, what? Really? We're spending millions of dollars, and you're, it's like, yeah, that's part of the potential of the coming technology. We've also done some fun stuff of late with the San Francisco Symphony. So if you have an interest in classical music, and you have, again, young people at home, and you want to give them experience of learning about music history or playing games with classical music, or giving them a virtual music performance simulator experience. So think of a flight simulator for a violin or a trumpet, or a flight simulator for an orchestra where you can actually be the conductor, and you can conduct one of 24 different performances by the symphony, so that if you change the tempo of their performance changes and the like. So some fun stuff. As you see, this is clearly a 2D environment, because VR and AR don't necessarily require 3D. That's, again, it's a choice, much like sometimes they are presented in stereo vision and other times they're not. Okay, because it has to do with what are you trying to achieve. Most recently, we've just completed a system which is a game-based telerehabilitation system for people recovering from strokes, which is this system on the left is currently being deployed in a nationwide medical trial supported by the National Institute for Health. And so you see that if you think about, you know, if you've known people who've had a stroke and they often have that partial paralysis on one side, we've created a game-based environment where their therapy entails doing different kinds of motor activities in the course of playing the game. And this is actually the largest game-based health trial going on right now in the US. And there's a new version, of this system that's built around an augmented reality style interface, which is in a preclinical trial thing. And then moving into the present, here at Cal IT, there's a new effort that's spinning up to look at how new technologies that are body-worn, like augmented reality goggles and headphones and embedded computers and body-worn sensors now kind of will help articulate smart workers in the factory so that you can know where people are at and what they're doing, and they can be interacting with machines or equipment. Again, kind of like you saw with the Intel kind of a thing, except now this thing is start to be more of a, not just a training environment, but for an environment for safety as well as performance support and improvement. Now, just finishing up here, one of the things that we've long learned from massively multiplayer online games is having a lot of people in a virtual world is something that people want to do. Because though we have meetings like this where we all travel together, given what we're hearing going on in the world and the news, people have some apprehension about just getting on an airplane or going what have you. And if there's a chance to meet at a distance in a virtual world, what would we want to do with that? Well, one of the things we'd want to be able to do where we have these large groups of things like students is give them, much like we gave to the kids, give them now virtual worlds or AR-based worlds where they can now do science or technology or engineering coursework where everyone in the class has their own laboratory to now just not to be entertained, but to be educated kind of a thing. And there's interest in doing that kind of a thing. So what we believe now is that computer games in the context of virtual worlds and VR and AR are going to be able to transform science education, manufacturing, and healthcare. And with that, I thank you for your time and attention. I'm not sure who's up next. Dan's up next.
So good evening, everybody. First of all, very interesting speech, Walt. And I was in France 2 weeks ago. I'm going back. Unfortunately, virtual reality seems to make me travel more than less. So I hope your dream becomes a reality soon. My name is Dan Leoskar. I'm chairman and co-founder with Eon Reality. And I'll try to talk a little about the things that Walt ended with, and give you some concrete examples. Rather than talking a lot, I would like to show you a little bit more. So just to set the tone, I'll start with a very brief video.
Education is the base for a thriving society. That is why today still, knowledge transfer is a priority. It has been proven that virtual reality-based learning increases learners' attention level by 100% and improves test scores by over 30%. Virtual reality allows you to learn faster, remember longer, and decide better. With 15 years of experience in knowledge transfer, our Global Creation Network introduced Eon Experience VR to bring its extensive library of VR and AR applications to the world. iOS phones and tablets. Eon Experience VR allows a user to experience content in VR. 2D VR. AR. Or interactive touch mode. The VR mode supports VR headsets such as Oculus, Zeiss VR1, Samsung Gear VR, Google Cardboard, and more. Eon Experience VR is making knowledge available, accessible, and affordable for everyone on the planet.
Okay, so I guess if I was to teach one of you here to crash land an aircraft, I don't think anyone will dispute the fact that it's probably better to put you in a simulator than to give you a book. And the first one will teach you a better decision-making process. So virtual reality, at least in the broad definition, has existed for many, many years. The big change and the tide that's coming now, that's becoming available for devices such as this one. And this is, for me, very, very exciting. I'm based in this business, in the simulation business for 26 years, and in the virtual reality business for the last 16. Now, we as a company focus on one thing, and that's knowledge transfer. And we've been working a little bit in this area. And what we are seeing now is these dreams and aspirations are turning into reality. However, you have to be very practical when you approach this type of things. So we have 4 pillars when we think about how to realize this vision. The first one is obviously that you need to have some type of platform that enables you to import data from CAD, GIS, healthcare data, and import them in a platform, in this case our platform, and be able to publish this from a phone all the way to perhaps a dome. Many different, 30, 40 different publishing formats. Because most people today, when you say virtual reality, they say Oculus. Yeah, it's true, that's one of them, but there's so many others. So that kind of is resolved, not only by a company like ours, there's other companies that do platform, although they may not do it with all the different publishing formats. A bigger problem, however, is this. Once you have the technology and once you have the software, someone actually has to go and produce all this content. And when we talk about knowledge transfer, you need 2 types of people. One, you need people that actually have the subject matter expertise in physics, in chemistry. And the other one, a vast pool of resources that actually can handle and develop virtual reality. Our approach to this has been to set up centers around the world, from Qatar to places like United Kingdom. In this case, we have a center in Manchester, for example, to France, Russia, Singapore, and many other locations around the globe. We hope soon, with the collaboration, that we could do something here at home with UCI. Now, as a consequence, every morning I wake up, someone somewhere has developed more learning applications. And this spans from industry to education. Please put things like oil and gas, or perhaps geology, geography, chemistry, physics. Virtual reality is very good if you want to dissect a frog without getting your fingers dirty. And we have totally about 8,000 applications, and it's growing day by day. Also, as a consequence of this, and especially with the arrival of this type of devices, we have now more than 36 million people around the globe that have downloaded our applications and enjoying them for a number of areas that I'll go into in a second. Fundamentally, we try to solve a problem. There's actually 2 problems that I see around knowledge transfer. One is, I would call it a quantitative issue, the fact that you have to teach more with less. The other one is a qualitative issue, is what exactly are we trying to teach? When I went to school, I learned about memorizing, remembering, understanding. I think the type of knowledge that my kids and my grandchildren will learn is more about creativity, problem solving, critical thinking. And we need to have these tools that enable us to do so. Because the blue line, what I remember, those are the skills that are now replaced by machines. So it just happens that not only simulators, but also virtual reality is very good at this type of things, exploring, dissecting, and doing things that are quite inquisitive and assessing. So that sounds theoretical. Let's give you 3 concrete examples. The first example comes from the health industry. So we have developed an ophthalmology solution that is currently used by Stanford and many other locations. So what it does, beyond the obvious, that you can dissect the eye, you can enter the eye, you can see how animation, blood flows, and other things are working, it does also something interesting. It allows teachers to program a virtual patient where the teacher injects various dysfunctions, cranial dysfunction, pupillary dysfunction, and the student has to assess and to diagnose the patient. So in a time span of weeks, the student can experience what he or she would have experienced in decades in the field. Now, the best part, this app costs $90, the books cost $600. So it's a big difference in price also. That's an interesting area. Another interesting area is about brain plasticity. It takes about 10,000 hours to be good at sports, and it's not, let's take American football, it's not only about bigger muscles or running faster, it's about your ability to take decisions, for example, as a quarterback. So we developed an application that enables you to be in a headset environment and call the plays. We started originally with American football. We've now expanded to baseball and soccer and help people that train in these sports to predict, decide, and assess faster. The last example is quite interesting because it is quite aligned with what UCI is looking, the smart worker. There's about 2.5 billion workers in the world today, and less than 500 million of them have any type of IT in their daily works. So for example, if this gentleman wants to repair his car, there is a way using augmented reality to get a guided step-by-step procedure that not only helps him to remember all the steps, but also can conduct the quality assurance so we see that what he does is correct. So this type of ability of providing contextual information when and where you need it, we believe will be is a big market and will be even bigger market in the future. So why is the industry interested in this? Bottom line, it's all about money. We have an example from the mining industry, a company that was able to reduce their service technician training with 92% by using augmented reality and 60% by using virtual reality. So that's why quite a few customers are currently using this type of technology. We see the same trend in education, although we are looking at different things there. Things like improved retention, that oftentimes translates in improved test scores. Quite a few customers in this area and growing. Even governments are now aligned with this. And interesting enough, we see the biggest value of this type of solution in developing countries, more so than in developed countries. Good example is Africa. We've been working there for quite a while with things like HIV, malaria, and other things. So what we're doing, we were talking about centers. We are setting up centers that essentially are schools. They are research facilities, and they build capacity so we can start addressing the big need, both in industry and education, for this type of solutions. You know what's happening in the market, I'm sure, so I'm not going to bore you, but it's a big growth. People estimate the market to be, in 5 years, 150 billion. I've seen small and bigger numbers. Personally, I believe that's not linked to one device. It's linked with many devices. I call this the Christmas decoration because every season we get cheaper, better, nicer. HoloLens, Magic Leap. We support them all. we like all the systems, and we support all the data in and we support all the data out. I was talking about centers. Let me just share a little bit more about the centers. We started with just a few centers a few years ago, and we are growing quite rapidly at the moment. I know I have only 4 minutes left, but actually I would like to stop there and do something unusual. I know they will have a panel, but see if there's any questions about what I've said so far. Anyone? That was not supposed to happen. Yes, please. That's a good question. So virtual reality is when you're totally immersed in an environment. Like, for example, this is a good device. I have my phone here. Put it in, slide it in, and you take it over your eyes. And you're totally immersed. I can move around and look all around me. Problem with this is I can eat popcorn or have a beer at the same time. It's not possible. you are engulfed. Augmented reality is different. I superimpose my information. I can either use goggles that I see through, and I can see things in superimposed, or, as you can see in the break, if you like, I'll give you a library. So we have 4,000 library objects that you have for free. And I can hold it against an object, and the object will pop up from the table, and I can follow the object. So I can walk with dinosaurs. My kids can be chastened by them in a real environment. That's an example. Yes, please.
What is the VR school curriculum look like?
That's a good question. So I have a whole presentation on that. I wasn't prepared for the question, but simply put, we are looking at teaching people modeling, but more so for real time. So the normal tools like Max, Maya, but adapted for real time. A lot of gamers know that already, but in our world, education and so on, we may need some additional knowledge. Then, of course, we teach them real-time engines. We have a real-time engines, the others out there. And then we teach them specifically now a lot about publishing for the new devices, phones. So how do you publish from a phone to a dome? What kind of interaction modality do you have when you have a big device versus something you can hold in a pocket? And then we also teach them actually how to integrate systems. I mean, you saw, I didn't show you much, but we saw some of these big walls. We have a dome that's as big as this room. And the students get to learn all the steps. Yep?
Is HoloDome's heads-up display goggles?
Yes. So there's about a dozen or so companies that produces those goggles. The ones that are out in the market today come, for example, from Amazon. They are see-through glasses, so I can see you. And they have tiny little projectors on the side with a mirror and a prisma that sends the signal and then injects it straight in your retina. So you can have an image that you see that pops in the air. I have 60 seconds left. And then you can, with things like HoloLens, where you can actually depict what happens in the real world or other systems, put things on the table. So instead of having markers, everybody that's played with AR have seen those little markers, right? You can see things popping up in a real context, in a real world. So you can, as HoloLens put it, you can be in a world of holograms, right? With that, I know we're going to have a little discussion later on. I have the great pleasure to introduce Aditi, and that I've been following your research for many, many years into the area of projection. So I'm very excited and interested to hear your speech. And
Okay, while we are connecting this, I am Aditi Majumdar. I am a professor at Information and Computer Science next door, and I'm also the director of the Visualization Lab here. And so today I'm going to talk about AR and VR from slightly different perspective, from the point of a researcher and educator. And so, kind of Walt talked about, AR and VR kind of having three different components, technology, content, and experience. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the technology side and what kind of experience you can really create. And we are going to have demos up there from 7:30. So, some of these things that I'm going to show you, you can probably see it firsthand from 7:30. So one of the people here asked a question, what is the difference between AR and VR, which kind of was good to lead to my thing. So I want to have a show of hands to see what people think about when VR was first invented, like first came into people come to know about it. How many of you think it's 1950s? How many of you think it's 1970s? And how many of you think it's 1990s? Okay. So surprisingly, there was about equal distribution for 1950s and 1970s, and very few people thought it's 1990s. Surprisingly enough, VR is around from 1957. So the picture on the left you see is 1957, the first virtual reality environment. Virtual reality means you are immersing yourself in a completely virtual world, and you have no contact probably with your physical world anymore. And this first machine was Sensorama, where not only people had visual cues, you would even have smell. You will even actually have all the 5 senses in that whole environment. So that's your first 1957. And what you see on the right is the first head-mounted display. How many of you have heard of Sutherland? Okay. So Evans and Sutherland at least is a very big company for flight simulators, and this was around the time when Sutherland was trying to figure out how you can train people without really putting them in a real device, right? So he actually came up with this head-mounted display in 1967, which is the first head-mounted display, right? And he used to call it Sutherland's ultimate display, right? And so, what he called his ultimate display probably is today ultimate. We don't know. Maybe there is another few years to go and we'll find something different, right? So this is our Sutherland's ultimate display today. This is our Sensorama thing, some of which you saw in Dan's talk too. Like you have really immersive environment. On the left, we are showing a dome. On the right, you see a few hours from here, you see Santa Barbara, where people have built a 3-story double hemispherical structure with a bridge on top, where you can actually have a complete experience of audio and video to explore different scientific concepts. And this is a visualization center in University of Maryland, where also people do a lot of virtual reality experiences. And that was virtual reality. Now, what people felt was, you are getting cut off from the real world. So you wear this thing and you move around and you have no clue who is next to you. So in 1992, from Columbia University and from the Army Research Lab, simultaneously there were 2 inventions, which is basically augmented reality. And you see on the left that the person is actually having some content, but he is also able to see through, to see the physical world, right? So that was called the Karma system. And on the right, you see in the Army, they were talking about virtual fixtures, where while you are training, you're also able to see the physical world. And, today's Karma environment is probably the HoloLens, right? And you have Google Glasses, and you have all these things which are doing exactly the same thing which people envisioned in 1990s, right? Now, what I want to show here is next step was like mobile augmented reality, right? Whereas you are now telling that, can I really have it on my mobile devices? And here you see some applications. You can point your cell phone to a shoe and you can get its make, brand, how many of them the shop has. You can go and take your tablet and look at environment, and you can see what kind of animals used to live there before, or how some furniture would look in your living room, or even if you're looking at a star and you can figure out what constellation you're looking at, right? So if you see here, all the augmentation is happening in the virtual world, right? And also the second point to note here is that, augmented reality and virtual reality really got a new boost when we can bring down everything to a very commodity level, right? Today there are so many people working on it because everybody wants it, because everybody can afford it, right? So I'm going to project a future, right? So what is next, right? The next generation of augmented reality applications, we call it spatially augmented reality. And what you see here is this is a physical world, a physical white model. And on the right, you are seeing that we are actually projecting light on top of it to change the reality. So we are spatially augmenting the reality, and hence the name, right? On the left, you see that I have here a vase which is very dull blue color, and I'm projecting my light on top of it from one or more projection devices to make it look like a very exciting and beautiful marble jar. You can even simulate the effect of small bumps. Though there is no bumps on this real surface, I can make it look like it's bumpy. So this is kind of, now the next thing is augmenting the physical world with projected light to create spatially augmented reality environments and new modalities of interaction. So what I'm going to show you today is kind of some of the work that we have done in UCI here, a lot of support from our departments and of course Cal IT2 GP. And so here are some new kind of interaction modalities you can have. You can project light on your hand. Imagine you have your keyboard right on your hand and you can interact right there, okay? So here are kind of, if we go a little bit technical, I'm not going to go too much, but I'm going to show you how these things all fall together. So what is a components of a SAR, means spatially augmented reality system? You have a physical 3D model. You have a bunch of cameras, because you are going to augment this 3D model means you need to know what is the shape and structure of this 3D model. So you have to capture that. That's why the cameras are there. You have a bunch of projectors because you have to project the light to make it look different. And they are, of course, driven by some machines and getting their content from somewhere, right? Now, what we are targeting this, people have been doing that with custom software or proprietary software. We are trying to see, can we make this super easy? Can we really have a school teacher or, a mechanic who can actually set up these kind of systems very easily? So in order to do that, today we have the tools. We are working on this area in UCI for more than a decade. I was funded by NSF to do this. So a lot of the things you are going to see, you will see actually big projectors in it, but they are all portable to this kind of devices, right? So today we have the devices where your projector has really become like a phone. So this is the recent laser projectors, which are microvision projectors. They were out of the market for a while. Now Sony is selling them. And this is kind of to show you the relative size. And we are talking about really treating these projectors and cameras and your mobile phones as part of the Internet of Things, right? You should be able to connect to them, talk to them. They should be able to talk to each other very easily. And you would get completely novel interaction methodologies, and you can have a lot of different applications, starting from the traditional applications of simulation training and so on, education, but completely new domain, including advertising and entertainment. So here is what we want to do. We want this to be the cloud, right? We want this to go to mobile devices, and then we want to get the whole spatially augmented reality component working. So just kind of, everybody kind of can think of intuitively what are the important aspects of this technology, right? The first aspect you understand is, you have to kind of have a completely decentralized way of looking at it. Like, cannot have like, I have one central machine who is going to control my projectors, who is going to control my cameras and everything. You cannot do that, because you want these devices to kind of act like free agents, right? Who are talking with each other almost like human, right? So that will give you a completely different kind of flexibility, reconfigurability. So that is what we do, we have done in our lab. Second thing is, whole is more than the sum of parts. I'll explain this. Now, this is what happens. If you go to many places now, you will see people are having these big systems, and they are using projectors which cost $60,000. Disney, right? One example. I mean, they of course have the money and they want to create the best experience. But if I really want to put it in schools, I cannot do that, right? So here the idea is to show you that if you really buy this kind of, even this presentation projector, thanks to Cal IT2, is very, very good projector, right? GP has the money, right? But if you really see our standard presentation projectors, which probably a lab will buy, it is going to be $500, right? And if you project on top of it, you will see that you're getting this kind of color variation. If you're projecting on a 3D surface, it is kind of having a funky look. So, and if you zoom in that region where you want to overlap the projectors to kind of alleviate the variation of color, you're going to see that you are now at the same point on the surface. Multiple devices are projecting, but they're projecting different content. So you're kind of getting a bad display, right? So how do we kind of correct this to create a display which looks nice, right? So here is how it looks. If you really apply our software, and you can use the cameras and kind of figure out how things are, and you can create this kind of a display. So here is actually the upstairs. We have a 9-projector display, and you can see all of them act like a free agent. So when they start, they kind of project some patterns, and the cameras of one projector kind of sees a little bit of their neighbors, and they figure out how they're arranged. And from there, you can get to a display like this, and this is just to highlight how good you can get in terms of getting them stitched to make it look like a single display. Here is another example, very difficult because it is a grid. Every line is 1 pixel wide, so it is very difficult, and this is the quality you can get to with commodity projectors. Each projector is less than $600. This is another display. This is just to show that you can do anything. This is like a cylindrical display. Can anyone guess how many projectors? Take a wild guess. No, Walt, you should not participate, right? You know. Oh, no. It's, it's 8 projectors. Okay, so that kind of is the point, that you're really getting the whole as much more than the sum of the parts. And this is kind of shows you the quality of the making the whole look good. This is in a lot of math behind it, but you can actually figure out exactly where your projectors are, what your object is, and what your cameras are. Here is another display that we did in Disney. Okay, also here the projectors were better, so you get even better quality images, but the surface was very complex. Here is an example of really a portable visualization system you can make. So this is a shower curtain, and we took this demo to Emerging Technologies in SIGGRAPH this year in LA. So this is a shower curtain. In the back, you see we have this $300 projectors, very small. These are these little projectors, and they are driven by a nano computer, and you can create experience like that. And I'll show a small video here. Let me skip this actually, 1 minute. And here is another example where we are projecting on a relief of Colorado River, and you can simulate the fluid simulation of the river, and then you can introduce a dam, and your cameras will immediately figure out that, oh, something new has happened, so the fluid simulation should change, and it changes the fluid simulation to create the effect of the dam. And next thing is kind of, with these cameras, you can actually open up several different ways of interacting with the display. And remember, when you're interacting, when you're really thinking of these as agents, when you're moving from one display to another display, they have to kind of figure out that you are not seeing a new interaction. You are seeing something which is continuing from the previous display, right? So if you take all those into account, there is a big handshaking going on in the back between the devices. And here's an example.
Our distributed interaction paradigm uses 2D gesture-based interaction. Each PVP is augmented with an infrared illuminator and a removable visible light cup filter. When the user touches the screen, infrared light is transmitted through the screen and reflected off of the user's hand to the camera. During calibration, visible light filters are removed and then put back to resume interaction. A graffiti application allows multiple users to collaboratively paint on a canvas spanning the entire display.
So you can actually experience this live when you go up in the after the talks. And finally, in the back, just to show you, what kind of think of a very large Boeing model, right? You are not going to be able to use one computer to display it, but you have at your disposal these multiple devices. So here is an example of how you can use these multiple devices to kind of do a data management so that you can edit it together in a collaborative manner. So here's just an example of that. So you can see here.
Since the edit operations may dramatically change the data both in size and spatial organization, the scene adaptive data balancing is performed on the affected region. This allows us to maintain interactive rates even with significantly large edits.
And finally, I'll take 2 minutes more, sorry. So just to kind of put it all together, imagine now, these can all work together to create a workspace where people can actually collaborate very easily, right? So now you see our personal devices are getting smaller and smaller, but when we try to collaborate, we all huddle onto a computer, right? So if you really want to think about, we are having open workspace where we have whiteboards all around, why not make use of it and create an environment where the user can pool together all his resources to create a spatially augmented reality environment, which is a workspace. And here is the whole thing coming together, and I'll end with this.
We propose a new paradigm called shared augmented reality workspace, where the user can easily transition between a personal workspace or a shared workspace by utilizing commodity devices bundled together to create an on-demand workspace made up of a cluster of active display units, or ADN units. Each ADN unit is made up of a projector, camera, and camshot modules mounted on a ceiling. These are connected to a PC cluster that forms a distributed driving architecture. YouTube professionals at Canvas, a system of scale, visual images, and sound make this easy to handle, in addition to other input devices like a mouse. This allows students to move the display around and the available real estate to fit the display in the desired shape, size, and resolution for the user. We show how one would be able to use the XAR workspace to collaborate in this distributed data environment. Users can visualize some data on a big display, then check out small components of the data via display segmentation in their own personal workspace. To commit to change, the model uses display aggregation. Or they can even use their local machine or remote with the display connected to a shared display so that their edits are visible on the shared display.
So finally, thanking our group here, iGravy. You can find me as iGravy. Just type iGravy in Google and you'll find us. And hopefully you got an idea of it. And next is Dylan Watskin from Monster VR. Dylan. Thank you.
There we go. Testing. Can you all hear me? Awesome. Cool. Hi, everybody. My name's Dylan Watkins. I am the founder of Monster VR. We come from a passionate little group of enthusiasts who found virtual reality a couple of years ago. And what this talk is going to be is just a couple of minutes about how we got inspired by virtual reality and try to inspire others to hop on the same bandwagon as us and get involved in this really exciting medium. So why do we want to get involved in virtual reality? Because we believe that virtual reality will change the face of this planet, and we're here to help facilitate that change through inspiring creative innovation. And what that means is we form communities all around this medium. We talk about it, we educate people, we teach them how to get running, and then we form deadlines where we get them to produce in a short period of time. Because that's just some of the best ways we found to get things done, is to say, here's a short window, let's make some magic happen. And the question is, why is VR so awesome? Or let's say mixed realities for this example. One of the reasons why we think it's so awesome is because humans are social creatures. They love to communicate. They love to be able to get what's in here to someone else's head. And we've been doing that forever. In the very beginning, when dinosaurs were chasing us, we were going, that was the first form of technology. Watch out, there's a monster about to eat you. And then it evolved. We created a new technology called language, where we could say, look out. And then after that, it got a little bit better. We created a better technology, and it was the written language. We could then take what was in our head, capture it out of the instance of time, and save it. So we could put, don't go over here, more monsters. So you can come by later and watch out for that. And it's gotten better with pictures, and then videos, and then finally with virtual or augmented reality, the zenith of this technology, where we can have a one-to-one communication with what's inside here into somebody else's brain. And that's one of the things that's so exciting about virtual reality and so mysterious is people try it, and you have to experience it to understand it. The technology of me saying it's good does not translate to this experience that you put on your head. And that's one of the things that when we first got started, we went around showing everybody this technology that we tried out. And once they put it on their head, they understood it, and everybody loved it. You know, it didn't have to be just video gamers or entertainment or people in the music space. Everybody loved it. And that was the biggest problem with virtual reality. It's so new, we didn't know how to get started. And so what we did was we got together with a whole bunch of our geeky friends, and we started doing hackathons and game jams and educational classes and learning and growing and building together. Just out of curiosity, has anybody been to one of our game jams? Raise your hand. A couple of you guys? All right, awesome. Just curious. So this is the timeline of how we got started. Not so long ago, but we were one of the first backers on Kickstarter, Oculus. And when the thing came in the mail, we put it on our heads, and the experience we got to try it was Zelda. Someone took the original game of Zelda on NES. It was a flat-down graphics and turned those sprites and popped them upright. And you got to play as Link, running through this experience. You ran through the whole top level into the dungeon. At the very end, you shoot the dragon that looks like a duck. And it was amazing. I got VR sickness because I played it for far too long. And but enamored and amazed, we decided to focus not just on technology in general, but VR as a specific medium. And we knew that we didn't know anything, so we started going around and talking to a whole bunch of people and all these different meetup groups about maker spaces, software spaces, and stuff, and everybody loved it. So we formed Orange County VR. We did all these game jams and hackathons, and we did a retro class, we did horror educations. We were the first ones to do Hack UCI, which we did last year, and we're going to be doing in about a couple days, tomorrow. Creeps up on you. So then we worked for a creative house called JMP Creative. They specialize in producing IP technologies for everybody in the movie space and toys and everything else. And I said, well, have you heard about virtual reality? They're like, yeah, but we don't know anything about it. I said, great, we do. Let's work together. So we partnered with them for about 6 months, and we created a piece of technology. We then sold the rights to for Mattel. And they're going to be coming out with our virtual reality technology device in 2016. It's really excited, but I can't talk too much about it. And when we did that, kind of professionaled up a bit and came out of there, we realized that the industry was growing much larger. And so we started making all these connections with multiple other meetup groups. We were going from San Diego to San Francisco, connecting all these people. And we decided to make a conference all based around inspiring other people about this virtual reality technology. And we did SoCal Virtual Reality Conference and Expo. We had 1,000 people sign up. We had 60 virtual reality exhibitors, all from, like I said, San Francisco to San Diego, all come on in. We had 35 speakers. VP of Samsung flew in, CTO of The Void, Walt. That name has a lot of authority behind it. So all of them came down. They spoke on 8 different panels, streamed in 360. It was an amazing event, and there was a lot of excitement behind that. So what's coming up next for us? These are the things we have just around the corner. Hack UCI, it's going to be bigger, better than ever. We have Unity coming on board, giving some prizes. Oculus throwing in some headsets for prizes. Our core team, we have a senior Unity developer from Qualcomm. We have Dr. Patricia Beckman-Wells, who is the former head of training for Disney's DreamWorks for the animations. And then we have the VR Film School. One of the reasons why I was asking Dan about his curriculum, just curious, because when we were working for JMP, we had to figure out 360. So we went on a whole thing where we interviewed all the top 360 guys in the world, all the hardware, software, everybody, and we kind of sussed out what was this medium, and we started developing behind that. And so what we want to be able to do is be able to give back to our community that same skill set. So we've brought in about a half a dozen experts, Springbok Entertainment, New Deal Studios, Realidyne, and several more companies to come on board to help teach people about this medium. So we'll be doing with GoPros. We'll be using the Theta S camera. If you guys haven't seen the Theta S, instead of having to stitch a whole bunch of GoPros together, you just hold out this device, you hit go. It's now recording in video, so everybody smile and wave. Hi. Awesome. So it beats stitching 14 GoPros together because it pumps it right to here. And the technology kind of creeps on you to where you don't really expect it. You know, they were trying to figure out how does virtual reality cross Moore's chasm. Well, we all put virtual reality in our pocket with a smartphone, and we just didn't know it was coming. It evolved as it was happening. But it's all very exciting. So this technology that we're taking, we're going to roll into UCI's VR lab. We're talking to the guys over at the Nano VR lab at UCSD. They're trying to do the same thing at the Cal IT2 building. So we're going to be trying to link these things together the way that the internet was originally linked together through the UC school system. This is Aaron. Aaron couldn't make it tonight, but he's one of the members of OCVR, and he was one of the first people that we taught at the original Hack UCI a year ago. He just has a fun story, and so I wanted to share it with you. You can go on YouTube and look under Orange County VR and check out what he's done, but he started out really not knowing anything about virtual reality or anything, had almost no Unity experience, but he was a CS student. Came to us, we told him we were hosting the virtual reality section, he wanted to figure it out. So we sat down, we worked with him, and at the end of the first hackathon, he made a thing called VR Classroom. It was an awesome experience. You can go from room to room. One of the rooms, you went into a Roman Colosseum that writhed around you. Other ones, you learned about blood cells and particles. It was fascinating. And he won. So we got him a Take 2, and he started showing up at all the other events. He went to all the different events that we threw last year. And he got better and better and better, and eventually was hired up by one of our other developers from OCVR to be a part of the famous group for becoming a Unity developer. And it's a fun way to kind of see this evolution of not really knowing anything, but just showing up through the grind and eventually turn it into something. That's one of the things we're working on with me and Dr. Patricia Beckman-Wells, is actually creating a curriculum so students can flow from the community college system up to the UCIs as this new profession arises, because it is a new profession. It's just not quite here yet. The way that I relate it, it's almost like it's 2006 and we're all talking about the iPhone. And the iPhone came out in 2007, and right now if you don't have the iPhone, you're weird, right? Someone says, give me a number, you pull out a flip phone, you kind of step back. It's one of those things, the mass adoption happens quickly and quietly. And with virtual reality, I think it's going to happen twice as fast. So these are the different types of events that we do. This is the types of prototyping that we've done. Really, it's just anything that really interests us. We get together in groups, and very free flow. We see what really inspires us to create things. But it's all around learning, building, and communicating what you've done. So we're going to talk just a little bit about a couple of things that we've made, just so you can get some practical hands-on. We went to the first ever San Francisco Virtual Reality Hackathon, and we teamed up with the guys from Tactical Haptics, and we made a virtual reality Ghostbusters game where their haptic device actually has a feedback system, so it feels like Slimer is tugging against you as you fight him. Think of like a fish on a hook. And so we made this in just a couple of days, and it won Best Overall and Best Unity Experience. And the tactile haptic devices are amazing, and they'll probably be put into some VR devices soon, but can't say too much more about that. This was more 360 video work that we did for our clients. It involves not only the practical special effects from movie studios, but it was actually made in a large box that stringed through the studio, and we ran our little rig through the whole thing, simulating an oversized cave. But we used green screens, After Effects, the whole works to kind of create this little micro set. And this one got a lot of attention. We did a horror hackathon, and one of our guys thought it would be a good idea to make the virtual reality electric chair that shocks you in real life. And it's a great idea to do to other people. So when you have to demo it and develop on it, it's like Saturday at 2 in the morning, and you hear giggle, giggle, zzz, ah! That's kind of what was going on until everyone was a bit frayed. But it's run through an adrenal system that's powered through the computer. We also have a haptic vest that it simulates your own heartbeat. And so when it beats on you like this, you can actually feel it, which makes you think that you're the one happening. And as the electricity turns on, the beat goes faster. It's a really impressive experience. And then what we did, because we thought it would be funny, is we set up a web camera. So right when you get shocked, it takes a photo and then posts it online. And so we call it like a scare share. It's the thing. These are just a couple of the other things that we've made from some of our different events. They're all little mini experiences, not fully formed out. This isn't very original considering everybody had this, but it's big. One of the really cool things about our unique kind of collaborations is the fact that we get to partner with very talented people from different industries. And so these are just a few of the key people that we work with on a consistent basis to produce things both for fun and for profit. So we've done a bunch of different things on both the 360 live action side and video, but we also done things with mobile development. We also done it with PC, but it's a really fun experience. Through doing all these events and collaborations and stuff, we've partnered up with a lot of major industry leaders. So Unity has us as their Unity ambassadors. Oculus, we're working with them. Samsung, we were the first pilot program to do the Gear VR and their educational process with Long Beach VR. Microsoft, they partnered with us for the December Ultimate Hackathon, hooked up a whole bunch of Surface Pros and a bunch of experts to help teach these people. But it's a really exciting time to be in virtual reality. It's something that I believe everyone here believes that 2016 is going to be the year for virtual reality. It's just hard because we're all talking about this thing that's not quite here yet. And so we have a bias for information we already have. But all the guys here are all in the space. No, the seam is about to burst, and we're on the edges to make this kind of thing happen. So don't mind me. I'm stalling for time. How much time do I have, by the way? Almost 2 minutes? Okay. I'll talk slowly. Well, actually, while I'm getting this thing up and running here, did anybody have any questions for me? Guy in the back. What kind of curriculum? I wasn't prepared for that. I have a whole slide deck that talks about it. But if you give me a sec. No, honestly, it's a 2-day course. The first day is going to be all about understanding what VR is versus 360, the different types of rigs, how to get up and running on them, just the general workflow of just shooting and capturing that content. The next day is going to be coming back, taking the already captured content, post-processing, print mastering, audioing, and also a lot of hacking. So we're going to be showing people how to hack on this thing right here, the Theta camera, and then also showing people how to hack on the Fly 360, if you guys have heard that. We'll be showing the GoPro rigs, how they get all stitched together. And then And then what we're going to be doing at the very end, because we like inspiring people to create things, not just, hey, learn it, but here's a reason and a purpose. So we're going to have a week-long competition as soon as this ends. And the prize is going to be not only some hardware prizes, but they're going to be working with a large band that has we'll just say 100% name recognition with anybody after that at the end of the year. So the prize will be, if you produce some really good quality content, their manager is going to be looking at it and going to be one of the judges the following week. So that you're going to go from knowing nothing to working with one of the largest bands in the industry to produce 360 content. So, one last question. Sure. 90% of the development for virtual reality is all done on Unity. 40-something% of all development for video games is done in Unity. The other 40% is native. So the reason being, it's a really simple medium that allows people to be able to create almost anything instantly. You have the advantage of having the Unity Asset Store. Are you familiar with Unity? Yeah. So the reason, Unreal doesn't really have an asset store. Unity, you can go into an asset store, and if you're not skilled in modeling or code or anything, you can just spend a couple of bucks, buy the game, drag it into your system, drop in the VR prefab or whatever you're working with, and then you can quickly port that out. So it's much faster to iterate and develop with that because you have it's just been around a little bit longer. Cool, awesome. Well, that is my time. Thank you so very much. And with that, I will go ahead and give it to Sierra and Foley here.
Dylan, thank you very much. Thanks, Don. Great, that was fantastic. Thank you, Dylan. I want to have everyone, while I set this up, if you'd all do me the favor of standing up and stretching for a moment. This is going to be related to a question I'm going to ask you in a moment.
Stopped working. Oh.
All right, great, thank you.
Oh, now it works.
So a quick question for everyone in the room. We've seen a lot of technology here. In fact, there are more letters and acronyms, I think, than any of us can internalize. But can someone name the most important technology when it comes to VR, AR, alternative realities? Anybody? Anybody want to hazard a guess? The most important technology. Content creation. Okay, anybody else? Great.
Processing power.
All right. How about this? Your brain. You. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to talk a little bit about a startup that we have, Immersive Entertainment, and how we're approaching the marketplace with a fundamental piece of software that we've delivered to the market. And I want you to keep in mind that at the center of all of this technology, all of these potential platforms, all of these acronyms, there's one common platform, and that's the human being. I was at great risk not to make it here this evening because I received good news that my Samsung Gear VR was being shipped. Thankfully, I think it's in Fresno, so I did make it here. So again, this is one company's journey, and hopefully we can pull out a little bit away from the technology and talk a little bit about the strategy, talk about some of our experiences, and some of this may relate to, how does a young company start up in this field when the market really doesn't even exist yet? So I'm not going to belabor this point other than to say that there's a gentleman named Paul Milgram who in 1994 coined the phrase mixed reality and this idea of the reality virtuality continuum. And if you want a nice sort of easy way to look at all of the different types of virtuality, they're all on this graph. Okay, we all know it's going to be big. Let's skip that. So when we started Immersive Entertainment, we decided we're going to look at the market and understand what do we have to do to create a company that's going to be successful in the market, right? No small feat when you don't know what the market's going to look like. But we knew we'd have to have the right team. And for VR, AR, or any of these disciplines, multidisciplinary teams are a must more than any other technology, more than any other platform, more than any other company play, this requires artists. It requires people versed in VR, biology, psychology, you name it. That's only a partial list. So we knew we'd had to have core developers who understood how to tell a story, how to use the technology, and also stellar advisors and a board of directors. We also had to have the right timing. So we had to understand, how is the hardware and software market evolving? Because if we looked a little too far ahead, there's no way we'd have anybody to sell to, right? And if we were too far behind, there'd be nothing unique to offer. So we ended up raising our first angel round through Tech Coast Angels in September. We had fortunately been doing a lot of development prior to that, thanks to the blood, sweat, and tears of some of our developers who are actually here tonight. If I mess up on the presentation, feel free to throw things. So we front-loaded the development. And our objective as a company was to reach revenue quickly. Why? To make lots of money? No. There are very few people out there right now buying software and VR comparatively. In the next year, you're going to see that ramp up. But the reason is so that we could start talking to the market. We could start talking to our customers and listening to them. So that was key for us as well. And then finally, we knew that we wanted to create a company that eventually would track to creating a form of IP, intellectual property, and also allow us to have an entree into AR, augmented reality. So if we started in VR, which is fully immersive, we also wanted to be able to dabble in enterprise when the right time came. Along with this came a policy internally we call zero baggage, which is to say that treat this as a new form of technology, a new form of expression, a new form of experience. We had no investment in legacy technology, which can be good and bad. We didn't have an engine of our own. We didn't have brands to whom we were tied. And so we were able to apply totally fresh eyes, what we call VR first, and really capitalize upon, if we're going to create a VR experience, what do we do? Well, let's look at what VR does best. VR forces a sense of immersion to the human being, a presence. It also reinforces delight and awe if it's done correctly. And if there's a sense of interaction and scale and other qualities that help drive that experience, then we're doing the right things. We didn't want to immediately fall back on existing paradigms, so we looked at the marketplace, and I'll show you how we approach that, but we didn't see ourselves as a training company, nor as a game company. So where did we land? Well, in the universe, and now Hollywood is really invested in 360 video. In fact, VR is kind of synonymous with 360 video and entertainment right now. The challenge for us there is whether it's live or recorded, you're looking at something with which you really can't interact much yet. Maybe there'll be future technologies where you can, but right now it's kind of a fishbowl effect. So you get to watch something that's already been recorded and you don't get to interact with it much. On the other side of the spectrum, we have video game manufacturers, AAA companies with large amounts of money. Well, guess what? They're invested in things like Call of Duty, shooters, first-person shooters, where you're running through an environment, incredibly fast, goal-oriented games. Here's the problem with those, is that as soon as you're laser-focused on a task and you're running through a room, well, there are a few people who have become nauseous. But even more important to us than that is that a lot of people, you lose a sense of immersion and magic because they're just basically focusing on a target. So we knew there had to be an area where we could compete, where we could create a product that really, again, capitalized upon the strength of VR. And that was right in the middle here, with CGI-based or computer-based, fully computer-rendered experiences that were highly immersive, interactive, scalable, differentiated, because it's difficult to do this stuff. You can't just get a rig and film it. And most important were emotional. And this is something that nobody's really talking about yet, but something that we hope to build an expertise in. And that is to say, whether you're talking about simulation for something that's a dry process, or manufacturing, training, education, games, or the type of experiences that we're talking about, emotion is important. Because if you're not interested in what you're doing and you don't have an emotional bond, guess what? You're not going to learn, you're not going to retain, and you're not going to have fun. So another aspect which came out of this, which was interesting, was as we started looking at, hey, what are we going to design? What are we going to create? The idea of narratives came out. We went to Hollywood, we talked to directors, we talked to game manufacturers, And all of them said, look, you have to have a story. Whatever you're creating, it can't be a dead set, right? Just a computer environment. You have to have a story. But here's the challenge. If you look at life as a movie in which you're being directed, there's a central director, there's a writer telling you everything that you're going to do next. Well, it's not very much fun when you do it 35 times. Now, admittedly, I have watched movies 35 times, but many people don't want to do that. So these traditional story arcs, taking a character through an adventure, are basically tantamount to placing someone in a commercial that they keep watching over and over again. So that was problematic for us. They're linear, they have low replayability, they can be instructional, but again, that goal orientation kills the experience. Instead, we thought, what if narratives were self-directed? How do you do that? You know, how do you have a narrative and not make it linear and make it self-directed? So we looked at, what if narratives were discovery-based and event-driven? So think about life for a moment, and think about experiences that you've had in your own lives. Right now, none of us, probably most of us, don't have the sense that someone is writing us right now. We don't know what's going to happen next. And that fills us with wonder. When we go home, we might have done something fantastic or met somebody new or had a great experience. And guess what we do? We bring those stories home to our families. Those are events. Those are what we call micro-stories. And a life, which is non-linear, which is not completely planned out, we see as a collection of all these different micro-stories, each of which builds attachment to emotion and builds attachment to awe, surprise, and all of the other human traits that are really important to get you interested in what we're doing. So if we look at this as a multi-layer cake, it becomes really important for us to start off at the bottom on the left-hand side here with an environment of some sort. Now, it doesn't matter whether that's an epic setting, like the Grand Canyon adventure that we've created, or a Dali painting. It could be hyper-real, crazy, surreal, or realistic. But it has to make you feel like you're there. Secondly, there are elements in it that have to be procedurally generated. That's a technical term. It means basically some of the elements as you move through this environment have to be dynamically created so that every time you do the same thing, perhaps the world changes a little bit. There has to be life in this world of some sort, driven by AI. Obviously, this is an AI, future AI, but present AI lets us imbue objects, animals, devices inside an environment with a quality that makes it feel like those things are reacting to us, like they have their own motivations, their own behaviors. And then finally, interactivity and responsiveness. If you can roam through this world and you're looking at these creatures and they're reacting to you, well, you want to be able to reach out and touch them and do something and have an effect in your world. It's a very human response. And then multiplayer, the idea of layering in social into this, hugely important. In fact, I would argue that you're going to see a few different waves in VR, AR, and otherwise. You're going to see some waves where you get particular adaptations that really hit a nerve, either in gaming or in enterprise. But when things are really going to take off is when you can do those very same things as a group with others. And then finally, the idea of building in our micro-stories. So here we're driving to, at the end of the day, an emotional response with all of the qualities that VR can give us. So we took our first steps, and we decided we're going to build a Grand Canyon kayak adventure. Sounds boring from a gamer's perspective, right? Thinking nothing's blowing up. But we ended up closing the angel round. We demoed the prototype at VRLA. Dylan, SoCal VR, thank you very much. Great response there. SIGGRAPH and elsewhere. We've demoed the software for about 1,000 people. And what was interesting was our concerns were allayed. People looked at it, and they couldn't believe what they were seeing. They said, not only can I look around in this world, but it's been so meticulously crafted, so carefully created, and there are small things that really catch my attention that I'm interested, even though I'm not chasing anything, even though I'm not blowing something up. So we now know that we're on the right track towards creating a library of these experiences of all sorts. Doesn't have to be the Grand Canyon, could be something else. But the fundamentals are that VR and a true VR first experience doesn't have to be a movie, and it doesn't have to be gaming. Now, there are still some challenges left. Haptics. There are systems out there right now that allow you to touch things and feel like you're being touched back, to feel like you're touching a desk or moving an object. But those are still expensive. They're purpose-built. That's a big challenge. Movement is a big challenge for us. The reason why we built a Grand Canyon adventure where you're sitting in a kayak is we could have people sitting down. Now, this next iteration sees you being able to row in this adventure and actually throw breadcrumbs to fish that are AI-driven, thank you very much, and they'll actually group and fight for the food that you throw into the river. But these are all baby steps towards what we're aiming for, which is a truly immersive, VR-driven experience into which you feel invested and you feel an emotional attachment. Ergo, you stay there for a while instead of popping in and out. And ultimately, for us as a company, this is not just fun and games. It could be a death knell to just be a title company. Yeah, we produce video games, or we produce just experiences. Well, you know, it's like producing movies. People are going to like them, or they're not, and you're a hit maker. So what do? You take this technology, you take a fantastic team that's being developed as we speak and continually built, and you take that team and you leverage it. And that team is going to help define the future of VR, and it's going to help define the future of AR as well. Because the learning that we're doing in the games, in these experiences, is directly applicable to the enterprise. It's directly applicable to all forms and uses of virtual technology. And once again, our missive internally is, do not underestimate the role of emotion. It is key in all of this. And so lastly, I know I have a minute or so. I'm going to show you just a quick clip. This is an early beta version of our software, just to give you a sense of what I've been talking about. And again, this is just the virtual set, if you will. Disclaimer, that's video. Okay. And by the way, this is on sale right now. You can pick it up in the Steam store. Not that all of you are going to rush out and do that, but people are buying it. They're buying it to beta test it, and the feedback has been phenomenal. You can imagine in a scene or a particular circumstance how many different micro stories you could tell, right? What if you got out of the boat and you got up and a bear attacked you, or there was a snake on the path, or a bird fell out of the sky? You don't want that happening every single time. But when it does happen, it's magic. And when you bring it home to your parents, to your family, and you say, guess what I did inside that, that's when we know that we've done the right thing. So, thank you very much. Thanks for your time. My stomach's been grumbling a little bit, so I'm glad I placed it up this way.
Well, thank you, everyone. Those are some very interesting presentations. We're going to take some time now for questions and answers. You probably don't need a mic in this room, but I have a mic, and I'm happy to bring it around. So feel free to raise your hand, and I'll come over.
Yeah.
Don't need the mic? Okay.
Photogrammetry? Not presently, but we're open to anything and everything. So as a company, we're looking at collaborations. We're looking at all sorts of different technologies. So we'd be open to looking at that. We have looked at texturing technologies, photogrammetry, others. What we wanted to do with this was really build an awe-inspiring virtual set, if you will. But there will be times when we're called on to create something more accurate, say. So.
We're going to use the mic just so it gets picked up on the recording.
You mentioned that you were using generating the landscapes and whatever, or I'm assuming landscapes dynamically. Is this an engine that you built from scratch, or are you using one of the open source ones and modifying? Or?
So actually, we're using Unreal 4 right now, Unreal Engine. But the dynamic nature of what we've built so far doesn't extend to the entire set or the entire environment. Instead, what we did was choose to take baby steps. And so what we're doing is we're populating it with trees and plants and other effects that add a degree of variability that helps. But ultimately, you're absolutely right. I think that's where this can go. And that is create a world where you can ultimately have somewhat of an open universe, say like a Grand Theft Auto, you know, and keep growing it as you continue exploring it.
Yeah, I'd like to throw out a general question to all of you. What do you feel is the sweet spot for interaction or latency in human interaction? So in other words, what types of delays are acceptable?
What you're really talking about is at what type of latency causes you to feel a sense of presence? What's the sweet spot?
Yeah.
So the term is motion to photon in less than 20 milliseconds. And so they found that if you have a refresh rate of 60 frames per second, you have a motion of photon less than. So what that means is when I turn my head in real life, all you guys move in less than 20 milliseconds. Inside here with this type of device, if I turn my head, then the instrument on here has to render my movement. It has to go through the GPU and CPU, and then those pixels have to change on this screen, and then those pixels, photons, have to go into my eye holes in less than 20 milliseconds. If you do that, you achieve what's called a sense of presence.
The extra credit is to figure out what the motion to photons rate is when you've had 3 glasses of wine.
Have you observed any sense of sensation when people are in the AR? For example, they see like what is a representation of what their arm is, not actually their arm, and it's touched in game, and they actually feel like it's being touched.
So have you seen examples of that? Is that the question?
There's examples of like people putting like a rubber arm in front of someone and then hiding their arm around it, and it feels like they're brushing and such. Has that been observed with AR tech?
Well, part of what we are doing in the stroke rehabilitation work, where actually motor control is core to the experience. And there we've experimenting with methodologies that entail either when you that you see your arm in the virtual space, in contrast to seeing a projection, if you will, a recording of your arm doing the same thing, or a reference, and then also then the combination of the two in order to try to figure out where do we get the most effectiveness in terms of the ability to uptake movement. And part of the challenge in stroke rehabilitation is you're working with people who've lost their ability to control, and part of what we're trying to do is stimulate the neurogenesis, try to basically prepare so work around those. And it's part of the thing trying to figure out then experimentally and clinically what people can achieve. So it's a reasonable question, and there are in fact now clinical applications that are being explored.
And actually, yeah, because it is even a simple system can help, because if you have heard about this, there are people who lose their limb and they kind of get their headaches, right, because they don't have the limb, and because they expect the limb to react to something, but there is no limb to react to something. So even if you kind of put a mirror in front of them, just to like kind of, if mirror to reflect this hand, just to make them feel as if they have a hand here, there are advantages, like the headaches go away, right? So even simple systems, and of course in augmented reality can go a lot more than that, And there is great evidence that even simple systems can really have very large impact.
One example of that was at SIGGRAPH. This was more a VR system than an AR one, but a very simple example of how when you understand this, you can do a lot of different things. A ball was suspended in midair, and you were asked to grasp the ball between your index finger and your thumb. Well, in the simulation, you're grasping the ball, and your fingers are apart. In reality, what's really happening is your fingers are touching each other. And it gave you the complete illusion that you were touching the edges of the ball, when in fact you were touching your own fingers. So there's a lot of research and work being done in areas like that. It's a bit of magic as well. So.
Great job to the panel. I mean, so many smart people all sitting at one table. You know, it's great. So what does the future of distribution look like for VR? Is it going to be more of an app store model, or is it going to be more of a Netflix model?
So, I don't want to hog the. So, in our own experience, we've looked at that because we've talked to a lot of Hollywood players as well, and there's a bit of tension, to be honest, because the Hollywood model, the storytelling model, is very well defined. There is a model in which everybody along the line, sometimes some may argue those that don't deserve to be, but everybody along the line is paid in some way, right? So there's a compensation model attached to distribution, and then there's a model that really controls that distribution. Then you have a software business, which it could be argued, there have been complaints about that, where it's, hey, you know what, the artists who are creating this stuff, they're just slave labor. You know, they're creating this software, thank you very much, but we're going to go ahead and distribute it because we've got all the different means to do that. I suspect you may see a bit of a hybrid where 360 and various forms of out-of-home entertainment, themed entertainment, things like that, could have their own distribution channels. But by and large, when you look at a software product like ours, we see it as software. And so attendant with that are the advantages and disadvantages of being able to distribute everywhere. The one thing I will say that we've done internally with our company is look at our developers as artists. And so we're looking at compensation models long-term that would really reward them, because we want the very best people, you know, not just technical developers, but people who can tell a story. So.
And for consumers, so for enterprise, it's going to be more so like a solution, right? So it's...
Yeah, I may add a few words there. So I think the smart worker is a good example. That represents a great value. And if you look at us as a company, 7, 8 years ago when we worked with Exxon and GE, we provided them with a high-end solution that was very expensive. Now the door opens that you can download through this. And obviously, when you put it here, the world changes, because now you can use this 8 hours a day. So the model of subscribing to that platform is interesting. I'm more excited even, I would say, about education. I was recently in Mexico City, and we are doing a $30 million deal there with the governor. So it's a big, big deal. And he said to us, listen, I just spent a lot of money to distribute 1 million iPads to Mexico City students, and they have nothing to put on them. I've seen your stuff. This is amazing. Where they can play, and we have about 4,000 apps that we offer now, the free version. We have a free version, we have a version you can buy. And I was in Macedonia a month ago. The Prime Minister put in 400,000 the iPads also. So this device is open, in my humble opinion, a whole new universe. Now, what's the model? Is it app? How do you price it? Is it like Lumosity, that you have your games and you can have I think we will see all these models. In the end, it's value. I mean, if you can encapsulate the value, whether you do it the way you present it or you do, they can learn more. That's, I think, very interesting. I would add one more thing. I'm really admiring what you guys are doing, because it's amazing. I've been in this business for 16 years, so I'm so happy to see what is produced. But I also think we have an obligation to create tools that I can put in your hands, and your hands, and someone that can teach in 7 minutes to be creative. Our goal is to make something, internally we call it UVR. It's going to be released in January, YouTube. But it's augmented virtual reality solution that enables people, normal people, like my mom, to do virtual reality. And I think that's going to burst the dam. because in the end, it's about creativity. All we are doing is tools. And if we can enable people to do it, then I think that's going to be very interesting. And then you can build all kind of business models. I'm not worried about business. It's a little bit like Google, right? Google came up, nobody knew what it's good for. They figured it out eventually. Okay.
So can my mom do it? That's the test, right?
That's the test.
Do we have any other questions? Yes.
So great presentation from everybody. I think everybody covered a broad spectrum. I could see, from biology, human anatomy to, entertainment, gaming, and so on. But I also see that I think the presentation from Beyond Reality about, the fact that there's going to be multiple technologies, platforms, and so on, devices. Publishing something in 30 different formats. Is there any consortia of any kind where standardization is something that we need? Because this seems to be more like the IoT stuff, where there are a lot of products in the market that I would like to buy, but more and more reviews that I read, it's more, I think the companies are trying to get feedback from the community as to how they're using it, how it's going to benefit them. And I'm kind of curious to learn, that there are a lot of companies out there today, enterprises that could actually benefit from this, but I don't know if there is really any maturity. Is there any interest? We're talking about a huge growth, in a couple of years. Have any of you seen anything in that domain? Thank you.
Are you saying it's difficult because there's a bunch of different mediums or platforms to build on, and so there's no consolidation? Is that the question?
Yes. I mean, when you have multiple platforms, multiple devices,
Sure.
It's going to be a difficult one to predict how things are going to change.
Sure,
and therefore, investment point of view,
Gotcha.
People are going to wait.
I would say that the best solution for that is the Unity-based game engine. The reason being it ports to like 23 different devices or platforms, so if not more now. So if you build it once inside this simple game engine, and we can sit here and show you how to do that, it's pretty simple. But once you can do that, you can port out to the iPhone, to the Android, to PlayStation, Xbox, PC, Linux, Macs, and so on. So really, you just develop it in there, and then you can port to any system. And so it creates a lot of cohesion.
So I think what that says is invest in software. That's self-serving, of course, but the hardware manufacturers, when you look at the stratification that's going to occur, not only will it be occurring across different OSs and different platforms, but also different quality levels. So really, that's going to determine a lot. You're going to have a very large audience on Google Cardboard and its ilk, and moving down towards consoles, Samsung Gear VR, and then a PC platform. Each one looks different. So you really have to pick your battles. From our perspective as a company, we could have gone into hardware. We looked at software because of exactly that reason. We thought, you know what? Let these big guys with all their platforms duke it out with their billions of dollars. They can afford to do that. Meanwhile, we're going to quietly develop software for a number of them as we see this market shaping up, and we'll connect directly with who matters for us, the consumer at this point. And then as time goes on, like Louis B. Mayer creating his movies, we're going to understand where the problems are, creating the sausage. And from that's a more informed position from which we can develop IP. So.
And I think another point there, and I kind of throw it to you guys because you're kind of in that market, right? I think there is also this issue of quality, right? Quality of experience, and I think to some extent you guys are trying to do that, right? How do you really quantify this quality of experience across different platforms, right? Surely you'll not get the same quality with your mobile phone as you would get with the immersive environment, and there's this whole spectrum of things, right? So maybe there should be a consortium to kind of figure out, we have seen this in TV industry quite a bit, right? HD resolution versus so on.
Yes, but who is the arbiter of quality? And so if you look at a quality gaming experience, right, it may not have the best resolution. It might have horrible sprites and graphics used, but it may be the best game in the world. And it's a hell of a lot of fun to play. So that's quality. It's a form of quality, right? For us, as a company, we did have to make that difficult decision around fidelity, around graphics quality, around rendering. But that's particular to what we're doing as an experience. And So we decided, okay, we're not going to support everything out of the gate. We're simply going to build a brand, a name that's associated with something that is spectacular when you're in it, and we'll follow the market as it develops.
If I may offer a piece of advice, if I take my investor hat, and you asked a quite basic question, is it too early? How do I know what to bet on? If you look at enterprise, it's simple. Because enterprise, if I'm a CFO, look, I have a mining company, and I spend $250 million on training a year, and here comes a solution that can save me lots of money. As long as I don't have to reinvent the wheel, as long as I can take data that I've created over the last decade or 2 decades, CAD data, import it in my whatever system, doesn't matter, and then I can export it from a phone to a dome, and I can do that because these things is a shark-infested water, right? We know a lot of people there'll be a lot of bodies around because not all the systems will survive. But it doesn't really matter because I have my content, I have a good platform, and I can save money or make money. So I wouldn't say it's too early. In fact, virtual reality, in my opinion, is semantic because before virtual reality in 2000, there was something called Web 3D. The value was still there. Going a little bit further back, it was simulators. The only thing that's changed in the game is the price. The entry point is so low. I think you had a very good remark on that. So I can do the ROI on a napkin. For most, even for companies with 50 guys, you can make money using this type of device. So I think that's the centric. These things will change. The only thing we know is guaranteed. They will look very different in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years to come.
And change is key is a word. You got to bet on the team. At the end of the day, at this point, unless the company has some mind-blowing IP, some incredible technology that's novel, and we've seen that this industry has been around forever. I mean, there's lots of patents floating around out there, right? What you want is the right team that has a long-term vision and a strategy that goes beyond what they're doing currently and translates into where you think the market is going, and does that in a sane way, step by step.
And I would just add, with regard to the issues of standards, standards are about suppressing innovation in the areas that are standardized. That's what a standard does. It says, we're all agreeing not to change this part. And since, as we've heard and seen, that this is, there's this new wave of technology that's coming, both software and hardware. And so it's still early to say, well, if, we certainly heard a lot about software innovations. We all talked about software innovations. Nobody's yet ready to say, and therefore all we need to do is agree to this 3D data format or this 3D animation scripting format, and then everything else goes, because it's like that's in many cases where the innovation is still happening. So standards will come kind of later, but we're, if as other people have said, it's kind of, it's a back to the future. It's 1993, and these guys have just pulled out this thing called the World Wide Web. And, it's like, it's too early, it's like the browser wars haven't begun yet. Yeah. And so that's what we're going to see maybe in the next year or two, are the VR wars coming, kind of a thing. And, pull up a seat.
Bet on that Doc Brown, somewhere in there.
I'm curious. I'd like to ask the panel, what do you think the future of the headset's going to be? Is it going to be more like a cell phone base, or are they going to be like individual, micro displays that different companies are going to come up with?
I have a feeling on this. I mean, nobody knows, right? But if you look at the trajectory of hardware, where is it going right now, right? So all of these technologies eventually become invisible. There's a principle called zero UI, and we're looking at multiple industries right now that are being affected by it. Wearables, computing everywhere, IoT, Internet of Things, right? Computing is becoming more and more transparent and invisible to us. And so there's no reason to think that this couldn't do the same. And certainly when it comes to something fashionable on your face, these rigs and the devices that we use right now, ain't nobody going to be walking down the street with those things on their faces, right? So style and fashion also figure into this. It's just a matter of time, and it's the same thing that happened in the mobile expression of technology will happen in this field as well, along with the fashion, by the way.
I guess my question is that since a lot of headsets are going towards a cell phone, inserting a cell phone into some kind of optics, how is that going to affect the industry for the micro displays and the small displays?
I think this is just a transition. We put it here because it happens to be. It wasn't designed to be put in this thing, right? We have a patent for something called AVR, augmented virtual reality, because virtual reality has problems because you isolate it. Augmented reality has problems because you're today limited to an environment. So AVR is augmented virtual reality. It's about having different proximity levels. So we want to look at each other, but we also want to see an artifact from Machu Picchu. And then we see the table, but starting from there, Machu Picchu surrounds us. And I can take this and make it bigger and smaller. Now, to answer your question a little bit in a wider sense, what I'm very excited about, we live in a crossroad of three things happening simultaneously. One is augmented reality, virtual reality. Probably even more exciting, although I'm in this business, is what's happening with artificial intelligence. I mean, I don't know if you know about this guy that works for Google now, and is trying to read Google, right?
Kurzweil.
Kurzweil, yeah. So that's very exciting because soon computers will actually understand what they read, right? So that's when things go south. The other thing that's happened is IoT. So computers are becoming very much, we have sensors everywhere. So now you have machines that become very, very smart, and you have sensors everywhere. The question is, we don't want to communicate like this with them. That would be like when I started. I had punch cards, right? So that was how I programmed my computers. Now we have this. My kids' kids will see this like very, very old-fashioned. So what I'm going with this, I think augmented reality and virtual reality provides the interface for man-machine for how we have to communicate, because the speed required in this communication is much higher than what we do today. So I think that's the future. So augmented reality will be, as this guy said, totally transparent. It'll be smaller, cheaper. You're not going to have this type of stuff. Eventually, you have lenses that are triggered by batteries blinking.
And here's the irony from the user interface perspective, how we do things. I'm actually writing an article on that covers some of this. But if you look at us before computing, what did we do to illustrate things? Right? I go, hey, look at this idea. Now, let me show you what this looks like. What do you think? And you'd move the object, right? So we'd use the physical world. We'd walk around. We'd demonstrate things. And then somehow these 2D screens and 3D screens had us pinned to our desks using mice and looking at two-dimensional interfaces. What's happening right now is we're so early in the industry that we've rediscovered a real 3D environment, a place where we can go, one that marries with the external world and one that's fully virtual. But guess what we've done? We've trailed behind our vestigial tails these 2D interfaces. And we're like, okay, good. I got this awesome VR environment. Now let me throw a window up there. Like, why the hell do you need a window? The real world, you didn't need that. So a lot of this computing, what we're going to do is come back to where human beings function best. And for better or for worse, whether we like to admit it or not, we're simply more efficient in many analog ways than computing has forced us to use computers, the modalities that computers have forced us to use them using. So we may have an opportunity with AR, VR to return back to being human, where the computing experience is so transparent that I could sit here with Doan and say, let me show you something, and it just appears, and I go, have a look at that, sketch on that, what do you think?
What's interesting about that is Google's goal with hiring Kurzweil is they want to be able to have basically you think of a question and then put that answer in your brain. That's the goal line.
Predictive.
Yeah, predictive. Yeah. And so where we're all moving towards right now is, like we said, the humans love communication, is this complete transparency of information. So, I mean, it's not a too-off distant future where you think of something, you put on the headset, you think of the world you want to go to, you invite your friends, and this is all done instantaneously based upon how you feel and where you want to go. There's a fantastic augmented reality book called Demon and Freedom by Daniel Suarez. You read it? Yeah?
I read it.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, right? And it really paints the picture. One of the things I think is fascinating about humans and all this fun stuff is we dream up stuff, and then we find a way to make that stuff happen. And a lot of people that make big things happen understand that. And so like the book Ready Player One, who's read Ready Player One? Hands up. All right, so you guys get it. At the Oculus convention, they actually put a signed copy of Ready Player One in everyone's handbag so that everybody could be inspired towards the same mission and goal. Because if we all understand the end game, we can all work towards that goal. So if we're all communicating instantly and we all become one connected hive mind, then what?
The singularity will kill us, and it'll all be over. So that's good.
Chris Wells. I was right.
So
Give it up. Give it up now.
That's all the time we have for questions, but I believe our panel members are going to be available afterwards to answer any other questions you have. And please don't forget that some of the technologies we've been discussing are going to be on display in the lab. Is that correct, Aditi?
Yes.
Right after
First
this.
floor, yeah. I mean, second floor.
Second floor. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
but I have a
It's
few
great
others.
meeting
Let
you.
me see. Let me just. We need to compare books.
And
That's all synthetic, yeah. So far.
Klein and Ready Player One, both my two favorite books of all time.